Hi. I think I met some of you the other day, but for anyone that hasn't met me, I'm normally louder than this. It's true. So I gave this talk at the Spark Festival last year. I think Spark was last year. Bit of a blur. Yep. I gave this talk at Spark last year for a bunch of social entrepreneurs, and I wanted to share it with you guys again tonight because for me and the startup that I will talk about in a second, it was really difficult to go through these fairly basic steps. When you listen to them, you're kind of like, that just makes sense. Why wouldn't you do that? And so, I wanted to share this presentation, but I get a bit more flexibility because I can talk about it in the context of my startup as well. So I am a product manager at Atlassian. I've been here for 2 years. Prior to that, I was a product manager at Macquarie University, one of 6 product managers in the team looking after all the university tools and services. During that time, we actually started a startup called Abilio, which helps people move across the transit network who have limited or no mobility, with my wife, Jessica, who's sitting over there, next to Stuart, not Stuart. We were tackling the problem of being able to move across the transit network because a lot of transit data and a lot of transit systems are built around the fact that you either have no step or a million steps. They don't really have anything in the middle. So we tried to find something that would take into account gradient, the level of energy the person has, whether or not you could only get halfway through your journey, and a bunch more. Over the last few years, it's transformed into a more, wider data platform that has a lot more dimensions to it, has a lot more data uses. And while we still have at the core of what we're doing the transit network and routing around the transit network, we now have the opportunity to share that data with people who can actually make changes in different ways. So car companies, bus companies, contributing that back to council so they can actually change the physical space that they have to meet the needs of people who are in their area. So it's really a great experience. And as Pete said, I am a passionate hacker advocate. I feel like Jono, I just kind of copied and pasted his LinkedIn profile and also mine. For me, hacker culture is kind of a big part of who I am. I've always enjoyed working in software, but I've always enjoyed in breaking things and trying to make them better. I've pretty much always done that since I was a kid, and now 20 years into the software industry, I get to break it for my job, which is really nice, and actually drive teams who actually do this as well. So it's been a really good opportunity. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about product management essentials for startups. It is not the only essentials. I want to stress that. Like, if this is the only thing you take away, is that whatever I say plus everything else you learn is super important. These are just the things that I think are really essential to focus on in the short term. If you feel like shouting out questions along the way, I'm okay with that. I work at Atlassian and it's like our job to be interrupted. Okay, so today I'm actually going to talk to you about your idea. It came to you this morning when you were in the shower, and it was great. It was a genius idea. You want to build a startup, and your startup is going to build an online media platform so people can watch movies and television anywhere that they are. It's internet television, and it's going to be amazing. How do you know? Because you would use it, right? And when you pinned down your neighbor as he was trying to get in his car this morning, you asked him and he said, yes, that's great, let me go. So you know it's a great idea. You got 2 people that are going to use it. So you take your first step. You imagine a world where your startup is complete, where your brand is established, your business exists, and you've got everything in place. You imagine what it's going to look like, how it's going to work. You write it all down on paper and you maybe build a model as well. And then you go and register a domain. You register You register mybetterstartup.com. You change your entire brand identity based on the fact the domain wasn't available, but that's okay. So now, welcome to the world, My Better Startup. So you've got the big painted picture. You in your head understand exactly what you're going to build, how it's going to look, what it's going to do. And you know that customers are going to want a high-level pitch of what you're going to do, so you quickly put a placeholder page up. You put together a landing page with your new domain. Thank goodness for free templates, right? Grab a quick free template, edit it, and you've got your page up and running. For less than $20, you've got your placeholder on the internet. This is where I'm going to be. This is the old construction image if you've been around for a while, with a little worker sign saying coming soon. This is the best $20 you've spent all week. So I'm here to disappoint you and then say that ideas are actually really cheap. They're important and they're good to have, but they are very cheap because you can have lots of them. You can do this every day of the week. Wake up, have a shower, have a genius idea, and on the bus on the way in, quickly create a template, register a domain, get it up and running, and by the time you're at work, you've got a new business, right? It happens all the time. So what can you actually do to get it from here to actually working and being implemented so that people are using it? Well, obviously, you've got to build it with code, probably, although there are no-code solutions, and I do encourage you to check those out. But you take the approach of, if you build it, they will come. But what are you actually building? You're going to build a product eventually, but first, you actually have to understand if it's worth building and what you should build. So you need to build more than just your final painted picture, which is miles away, because you will never get there. If you keep building towards that final goal, it'll never happen. I can tell you that. You need to break it down into small pieces, and you need to think about how you're actually going to build those pieces, but also how you're going to prioritize those pieces. And so the three things you really need to keep in mind is that you need to build demand. Right? Demand has to keep going up for what you're building, because you'll stop caring at some point if that demand is in the toilet, or you'll feel like you can put it on hold for a while if there's no demand pushing you to keep moving forward. You need to build your product. It needs to look good. It needs to work. It needs to hold a whole bunch of stuff. And you need to build your brand. And John, I talked a bit about brand in the Pledge 1% side of things, but I can't understate how important a brand is. You can have no products and just have a brand, and you can actually trade off that, right? Because what you stand for is something that people want to invest in or something people want to get behind. If your intention is to build products or services, you have to start with a good sense of who you are and what you're going to do. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So, before we jump into building software, let's talk about creating demand. Demand is not just for your product, it's also for your brand, it's also for the features it's going to have. And there's a couple of ways that you can start to do this. So that $20 domain and free template that you put there, you should start putting that to work. You should actually put a user data collection form on here. Get signups to a mailing list. MailChimp is free. They even give you the HTML to paste into the template. Start collecting users, because these people are interested in what you're doing. That's the demand, right? They are actively seeking you out. They are giving you their information and saying, you should talk to me because I want something. You seem to have it. Let's talk. And there are so many free landing page services around, it's not funny, right? Like you can sign up to LaunchRock. I think there's a bunch of others. I won't name them all because I'll get stuck. But you can sign up to these services. They're free and they do all this for you. It is easy. And you can have a mailing list of people who are already interested in what you're doing before you've even started. And why is that important? Because you need to talk to your customers. And the asterisk is even your potential customers. Sorry, I had to look in on that. It's bigger up here. You need to talk to them because you think that you've got a great idea and they think that you have a great idea, but you don't know that you're talking about the same thing. Their idea of what you're trying to accomplish might be slightly misaligned. Or you might be really wrapped up in one part of what you're trying to deliver and they don't care about that. They actually care about the other part that you're not doing right now. So these people are eager to talk to you because they've already given their information to you. They want to talk to you. Talk to them. Ask them what they want. Ask them what's important to them. They don't have to know you don't have anything or that you haven't even started building. You can talk to them about what their needs are and start factoring that into what you're going to build. And this is your first opportunity to build a customer-driven experience. So they're the ones that are going to decide what you ultimately build. So reach out to them, ask them what they want to do, what they think you're trying to accomplish, and whether or not those things align can help factor in what you do with that information, but at least start talking to them. So what problems are they having? What are they trying to solve with your product, or what do they hope will be solved with your product? And what's the minimum amount of things you can do in order to reach their goals, right? So if you ship something and it's only got one feature, your online media platform plays one video, it's a cat video, it plays it over and over again. If that's all they want, build that, give it to them, ask them what they want next. Because if they're satisfied with just that looping cat video, then you've done your job. I don't know how you'd monetize that, but you've done your job. So start asking questions and constantly ask questions. Every time you give a customer something, or every time you dig into something that your customers are telling you, ask more questions. Ask them what they mean. Find out good questioning techniques. Invest in that part of your discipline, right? Because there's a bunch of different formats and templates and things around this that you can use. Atlassian uses one called the 5 Whys. Everyone's heard this, right? Someone says something and you're like, why? And it's annoying, but actually it's quite informative. So let me explain why. Because when someone says something to you, like, I find it difficult to get to the city and I don't like public transport, so therefore I'm going to drive, and I don't like, parking in the city, so I have all kinds of issues getting into the city. So that's a really classic example. The why becomes more important when you start to ask, why don't you like going to the city? Because I don't like getting there. Why do you have to drive? Because public transport in my area is terrible. Why do you drive all the way in? Because the car park near my place is insecure, or is not safe, or is not accessible. Why do you, find that to be the case? Because that's the closest one. That's the only one I know. I haven't really got any other way to find out where to go. So you start to dig into these problems and get really good answers to those questions. So you've gone through the experience of asking them what they want. You've started planning out what you're going to build. And then you're like, yeah, this is great. I know exactly what I'm going to build. Time to celebrate, right? Wrong. It's time to build a crazy wall. And it's time to build a wall. And seriously, I give this advice to everyone, but you should build a wall and you should make it great. So a crazy wall is awesome because it's a place where you can put all of the experiences that you want your customers to have. And you can map them out like this. This is slightly different. Let me show you a different example. So you write up a flow of everything you want the user to do, and then you you put it up on the wall, and then you talk about how to get from step to step. If you want to refer a friend to your product, how do you do that? Where are they when they push that button? Is it a button? How do I share the information that I've discovered out of your service? How do I add information to it? How do I contribute to it? How do I shape it? How do I tell you fucked up? You need to be able to collect all this information and these patterns and actually make these experiences real. Because once you put them on the wall as tasks, you can actually then map between them and say, I can't do this step until I've done these 3 steps. So now you start to plan out your entire customer journey and map out the model that they have. And more importantly, you're going to map out the path that they take through your product. That path is important because now you can step back and actually start adding dimensions to it. Is this going to be painful to use? Is this going to make sense? Is this the first time the customer actually ever saw this particular option? If that's the case, that might be friction, and you need to address that because customers who experience friction are just going to drop off and stop using your service. Unless you've already had the Mick talk, in which case you know that they're going to walk across glass for you. But you want to reduce that friction as much as possible, or target the areas where you want them to be okay with having friction because you just can't address that or it's too big. But you want to map out that friction and address it really early. And spar your ideas with real humans, not family, not friends, right? They are people, but they're not real humans in the case of you building your app. And the reason for this is because they will most often bias their answers to what they think you want to say, right? Unfortunately for my wife, she experienced this when I put on my product manager hat at home and we had our crazy wall and she put her idea up like, this is great. And I'm like, what about this, 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 and this? And she wasn't very happy with that. But It was important to go through that experience, right? And you need to do it with people who are going to use your app, not people who think they know the people that are going to use your app. You need to do this with actual people who are going to use your app or your service or your product or whatever it is. Spar them. Find out what they would find frustrating. Find out what they want to do and make sure that's all up on the wall. Ask lots of questions and get them to put up problems on the wall. Don't talk about a step, and get them to explain what they think that step does or what they would expect to see after that. And that will help you formulate that entire customer experience. Once you've done that, you'll actually be able to see the flow through the app or the service or the product, and you'll be able to see the minimum number of things that you should build in order to give them an experience that works, that meets their need. And with that, you can actually take the minimum viable product or the minimum viable experience and build that, because that then becomes the only thing you need to build in order to understand whether or not you're going to be successful. Because if you build any more than that, you've wasted time. And if you don't build that, then you're building the wrong thing. So you need to get this balance between building the right thing and not taking 12 months to build it. And that's important, because if you build the right thing and it takes you a small amount of time and you ship it to someone and then they use it and they love it or they hate it, you can change it and you can improve it, and you can do that fast. If you build the thing that you've painted the picture of in your head when you're in the shower and you're like, I'm going to build that, it's going to be amazing, it's going to take me 2 years, it's going to cost me millions, but I'll get there, that won't help you, because in 2 years your customers have stopped caring about the problem, or they've found a solution to it, or you really legitimately were the only person looking at that problem, and then you might have another issue. So you need to think about that minimum viable experience. What can you actually put in front of the customer and solve the problem? At Atlassian, we have this thing called a triad, and this is important for startups for a couple of reasons. If you're a non-technical if you don't have a technical background and you're building a technical product, is there anyone doing that here? Yeah? Do you have a technical person who's in your team or that you can have access to? Good. The reason for that is that I don't have a great design background. I have a good UX background, but I don't have a great design background. I can look at something and go, that's rubbish, but I can't look at it and go, that's amazing. For me, the experience side of things and the product side of things comes fairly naturally, and the development side of things I know well, but I don't know enough about to be able to make good decisions, great decisions. The triad at Atlassian is responsible for balancing out these personas. You've got someone who's very, very familiar with the user experience and very familiar with how to actually visually build compelling products. You have someone who understands the marketability and the actual customer fit and customer experience and pain and research and analytics. And then you also have the developer who tells the other two of us that we're idiots and that we have no idea what we're doing and that it's impossible to build, right? And that's an important thing to go through, because you think that you've got a great idea, and you might, and it might be the best market fit you've ever had in your life. But a developer might tell you it's going to take 10 years to build. A designer might tell you that the experience is so poor that yes, it solves a problem, but you're going to probably actually make their life more unbearable. And so therefore you should abandon that thinking and help you around it. Designers don't just do visual stuff. They also do usability stuff. They also do a lot of research, and they can help you understand your customers a lot better. They can put a prototype in front of a customer, run them through it and say, what did you think? And then highlight all the pain points that you didn't see before. And again, understand what's actually possible to build, because it's easy to get stuck in a trap of, I need to build an app or a service, and I need to build a backend to that, and I need to build a database, and oh yeah, I forgot about search, and what about the maps, and I want to do this on my own. I don't want to use a framework because I've been told that they're bad. And so you end up building all this stuff that you don't actually need to build, or that you're trying to tackle a problem that's impossible to solve because it's never happened before. And maybe you should start to ask yourself whether or not that's actually a good thing, or something that you should be, taking a step back from and saying, am I doing the right thing? And that's where the triad, and particularly the technical person, becomes really important. So you have an MVP, you have a hypothesis, really. If I build this thing, customers will solve their problems, right? Well, only one way to find out. You can talk to your customers again. I beat on this quite a lot, and not because I think it's important to talk to customers, although it is, but because the information they give you has a half-life. Because in the time that they've spoken to you, they've had more information about what the problem is, and they can maybe go and identify other problems, for one. There might be other market movements that shape you out of the market, for two. And you can refine what you're actually trying to build and the way you present that to your customer, and you might get better at doing that. Who's done their 60-second pitch and nailed it yet? So once you get better at that, you get better at explaining everything you need to cram into the one little, 60-second window. And that is something you have to get better at doing with customers as well. Clarity. There's some good way to test as well in front of customers. You can do paper prototypes. At this point, I've still built nothing. I've got an idea, I've got a crazy wall, I've validated it in the market, I've validated it with customers, and now I can build a paper prototype. And these are simple. You can actually build a paper prototype. You can draw out what your app or service or product is going to look like, and you can put Post-its on it and say, what would you do here to a person? And they go, I don't know, what would I do? Say, well, this says click. What would you do with, click it? And so someone clicks it, and then you quickly flip the thing, and they're like, oh, that's underneath it, right? Like you need to run them through the experience in a visual way sometimes, because that actually helps people go, that makes sense, or that is dumb, or please get away from me. So prototypes, whether they're paper prototypes or there's InVision, there's a bunch of other very rapid prototyping services you can use, are very helpful in understanding how customers are going to use your product, how they intend to use it, and for you to highlight how it's going to work so that people can use it and then go, that doesn't work for me, or I expected something different, and you can change it. And now you build it. You've got your MVP, you've got your experience, you've got your design, build it. And as soon as you can, as soon as the first user can use your product, release it. Release it straight away. This is something that we failed at. I failed at multiple times and probably still continue to do so. You should release something because it's uncomfortable to do that. It's uncomfortable to put it in front of a customer, but it's really important because even if you only have one customer using your product, there is someone using it and validating the experience. There is someone with the problem you're trying to solve using your service or product to solve that problem. And it's either going to work or it's not. And if it stops working, they'll stop using it. And if it is working, they'll keep using it and maybe they'll tell their friends. But it also gives you an opportunity to measure something, like how they move through the product, how they use it, what they click on, what they don't click on, what the experiences that they have are. And yes, you only have the time while they're using the app to do that, but that's still more time than actually going and visiting every single person who's using it and asking them. Now you have data asking questions for you. So once you've measured something, maybe you've made a change, you've changed a flow or you've changed the text in an icon, release it again. Seriously, as soon as you change anything that can be released, release it straight away. And if you add a new feature and you want to test it, release it again. And this is a pattern that continues on and on and on, right? Like release as often as you can. As soon as a customer can use it, release it. So it is important to release in a direction, though. You need a roadmap. You need a plan. And that vision that you had in the shower is still real. It maybe is a lot clearer, but now you've got a plan to get there in very small stages. You need to start drawing that out. So you've got your smaller releases, you've got your small features you're working on in the next few months, and then you've got your big picture. You don't need a clear plan to get to your big picture. You only need lots of clear direction towards it, because every decision you then make can be made towards that plan. And roadmaps need constant attention. You can have a vision, and this is what people buy into, and your features might not directly map to that, but eventually they will, and eventually they should. And if you aren't, you should be changing your vision. And if you're changing your vision all the time, maybe you should be thinking about what you're doing. And it also helps you build a backlog. And this is really important because it gives you a list of things that you can work on when you've got a small amount of time or a huge amount of time. It's got a collection of things that you know you need to build and build towards. And you already had your backlog on the wall. If you've built out the ideal customer experience and you've only built one stem of this entire tree, then you already have the entire backlog there. Capture it, put it somewhere like Jira, and actually put it in there and visualize it. And now you have an entire list of things that you can do and work on at any time. And all of these things should be working towards that big picture that you had on that wall. And so now when someone says, what's your strategy for the next 1 to 2 years? You have it. What are you working on next? You have it. You have someone technical around, bring them around, show them your crazy list and go, how long do you reckon this would take? And then write all that in there, right? Use these pieces of information to map out this backlog and have something to do. It's hard. This part actually is probably one of the hardest things because you get a list of, this would probably be a list of 100 things by the time you finish round 1. You might go over it again. Suddenly you've got 400 things. You're like, what the hell am I actually building? And then you need to whittle this down to things that are important. You need to whittle it down to things that you want to do next, things that are investable, things that are just going to waste time, things that you can replace with another service. If you're doing user authentication, stop. Go use Auth. Don't build your own authentication, right? You're going to waste months. You're never going to get it right. Your security is going to get compromised and you're going to have all kinds of issues. You're a startup, use a service like Auth, jump straight on it and use that. Same with analytics. Don't build your own analytics engine. You wouldn't go and build Google Analytics to measure the web traffic on your website. Do the same for everything else. Don't build your own servers. Go use AWS. Finish with the server, destroy it, build a new one. These services are there to help you. And once you start to use them as the commodity that they are, they actually become very easy to consume and use. Don't build DNS servers, don't build mail servers. There's services for that. Go do that. Like backlogs for Jira. Target your features. This is kind of hard. So you've spoken to customers, you think understand what they want and what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, and you need to start targeting the features that you're building. Did I mention you should talk to them, ask them, get a priority list from them? This is the most important thing you can do as a startup is have a constant conversation with your customers. There's even an online service that connects your app service or website directly to you so you can chat to them. These things you should do because this is probably the most important channel of feedback. People who use and love or hate your products and want to tell you about it. Because the people who don't tell you about it, stop caring. And that's the worst feedback you can get, is none. So you're often on your way, you've built your new Netflix type thing because you didn't realize that was coming. And now you need to do competitor research, right? Oh, crap. I've started building something. Now I really need to work out who else is in this space. You should actually do this beforehand, but this is something that you can do on an ongoing basis. You should always understand who your competitors are. This always changes, and the things that they offer always change. And believe it or not, the smallest startup is often paid attention to by the biggest companies. And if you do a feature and they try and copy it, right, because they're like, this is working, this is great, look at how much success they're having there, we should do that, or something like it. Or we really like the way they're implementing that. You should do the same. You shouldn't copy what people do because that's bad and probably illegal. But what you should do is understand what the competitors are offering and why it works or doesn't work. Because if you can offer something that trumps what they're offering, or you can offer something that better meets the requirements of the users than what they have, then you should build that. And if you don't want to compete in that space, then don't compete. Sometimes it is easier to say, you know what, the competitor has a better share of this market, I'm going to tackle this part. Because they're completely ignoring it or because it's irrelevant to them. It's a big piece of pie that you can just eat into and they don't even care. And you should focus. You should target features one at a time. You shouldn't build 2 things at once, right? You should be building that one thing right now, not another thing. You shouldn't be working on your authentication and your database and a whole bunch of other stuff. No, you should be working on one of those things, get that done, get that working, move on to the next one, even if you haven't got something released to customers, because that's the only way you will work through it. You are a single thread. And you should only target one customer group relentlessly, right? They are the most important person to you. Make sure you're meeting all of their needs and make sure you're not doing the wrong thing by them, because if they leave you, then you need to get another customer so that you can continue working towards a customer goal. One way to do this, as I kind of head towards finishing, is personas. You need to understand who your customers are. And one good way to do this, and this is really easy, Atlassian has a lot of resources on this, there's a lot of resources around in UX on this, is build personas. Understand your users and how they tick, what they want, what kind of user they are. There's a difference between a user who wants to use your service like ours for mapping out transport for themselves on the weekend when they're heading home from being, out with friends, than there is for someone who's commuting every day to work, than there is for someone who's helping plan out the journey for someone else, right? These personas are important. You need to map them out. You need to understand them because they're the features that you're building for. And if you start building features for one persona and then you start focusing on another persona, you're not building features that all of your customers want. You're building some parts of some features that some of your customers want. You need to nail that one persona, understand who they are, and just build it out. And this is really simple. These are the Atlassian ones. I could test Jono on who they are. These are all around the building, right? We put posters up. We describe them. These people have fictitious backgrounds invented by product managers and designers all across Atlassian. I think if any of these actual actors ever died, I think most of Atlassian would be traumatized by that because these people become ingrained in the stories we tell. We talk about a product, we talk about a feature, we're talking about these people. We've grown up with these people almost, right? They use our products, and that's important because when we explain a feature, we can say, oh, when Emma uses this feature, she's going to use it this way. We know that she's going to interrogate every aspect of that feature. We know she's going to fiddle with every button. She's going to click every screen. She wants to know everything that's going on. We also know that Harvey only wants to see the data, right? He doesn't care about the bells and whistles. He has no interest in any of that. These personas help us shape our products. And these personas, not these specific ones, but the personas that you build for your customers will help you shape your product. And you can then go to your crazy wall and say, if I was this person and I was using my product, how would I use it? How would this work? How would I approach this problem? And another way to focus is focus on what you want to get mind share in. If your startup is going to target one area, target that area well. You want to be the person or the people that everyone thinks about when they're talking about that space. Our plan is to make life accessible for people across transit networks and pedestrian walkways. We want anyone that's talking about accessibility in those spaces to be thinking about us. It's an ambitious goal, but that's helps us drive every decision we make around our features and every decision we make around our products. So if you want to be the video streaming service for mobile, for hotels and all that kind of stuff, you need to deliver on that promise every time you release a feature. Not just once, not just the second feature, not eventually when you finish everything that you've got planned. Everything you release has to go towards that mission. Because if it's not, you're not releasing the right stuff or you don't have the right goal. And that's okay because you can change goals because that's a learning experience. So, main points, ask more questions. Don't just build a coming soon page, talk to customers, build a crazy wall. It's worth it. Don't design in a vacuum. Talk to other people, talk to users, talk to technical people. Talk to experienced people in that space. It doesn't have to be someone who you have to explain your idea to. Sometimes it's just a matter of saying, we're trying to collect mobile analytics. What do you guys do? You don't have to explain your whole idea to understand parts of things like that. And focus. And release something. Always. Anytime you can. Because if you release it and it works, that can only benefit you. But if you release it and it fails, well, at least you tried. Thank you.